Thank you for listening to Dream 10X Radio, where we interview people attempting to live extraordinary lives. Our twofold purpose is to both direct and inspire people bold enough to do the same. Dream 10X. Face your fears and make your life count. I met our next guest through one of our rowing teammates, Jeff Byron at Alexandria Community Rowing. We encouraged each other in the men's 2K meter events at the 2008 Crash Bees in Boston. And then the last time I ran into this guest was at the 2013 Head of the Charles Regatta in Boston, Massachusetts. It happened to be that this was the same year that he and his senior year roommate, Gabe Blanchett at MIT, started Grove Labs. Grove Labs was a startup company that they set out to solve the problem of food supply chain logistics and sustainability through the sale of in-home aquaponics grow systems. He's a 2009 graduate of T.C. Williams High School in Alexandria, Virginia, a 2013 MIT graduate, a TEDx presenter, and co-founder at Grove Labs in Boston, Massachusetts. Please welcome Jamie Byron. Welcome, Jamie.
Hey, James. Thanks for having me here.
It's great to have you on, man. Long time no see. How you been doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm kind of settling into life here on the homestead, and figuring out my niche in my new business here, and just trying to kind of build community and build things here on the farm and on other farm properties, and really just get my new life on track.
Well, great. I'd love to hear more about the status quo today, but take us back to your T.C. Williams High School days. And after you graduated T.C. Williams, what were you thinking of doing with your life at that point?
So when I was at TC, I mean, rowing was a big focus. I mean, it was what pretty much all my energy went towards, and I think that was due to a couple things. I mean, one, there was just such a great community around rowing at our school. You had the men's teams and the women's teams together in one place. You had all the coaches, all the parents. We had that place, that boathouse, where we kind of all gathered every day, sometimes twice a day. And so that was kind of my community. And so I really put all my heart and soul into rowing. And then my side interests were really physics and engineering, and particularly when it came to climate change, what we could build, what technology we could build to alleviate the impacts of climate change and sequester carbon. And I was really focused on technology at the time. And so those two things kind of collided, the rowing and the technology and engineering. When I think the coach reached out to me, or I met him probably at Head of the Charles or somewhere, the MIT freshman coach, and he said, "Hey, I think you could probably row here at MIT. Like, you've got the grades and the scores and the interest in engineering, and you've got the scores on the erg and the record on the water." And I'd never really considered going to MIT. Never really thought that I was necessarily that caliber of student. Really never considered it until I met him, and he was like, you should just try. And I tried, and he kind of helped me through the process and was my mentor in terms of applying and doing what I needed to do to get in. And
that's awesome.
Sure enough, that spring, the letter came back, and I got into MIT.
Wow.
Yeah, so it kind of came out of the blue, and I mean, people were really surprised because I wasn't like a great student. I mean, I was in some of the top classes, but I definitely wasn't the top of the top. I probably graduated 30 or 40 in our class of 700, and the people were kind of awestruck, like, wait, he got in there? What? But yeah, so that's kind of what started me on this journey, and eventually led to founding Grove Labs.
That's cool. What was the coach's name there at MIT?
His name was Andy. Andy. Oh man, I know a lot of Andys. They're all merging together.
Yeah.
But he was Andy. He was there for a couple of years, and he was really responsible for growing the program to what it is now. I mean, this is for lightweight team, but he really focused on recruiting and actively recruiting and going out. A lot of the other schools, like Harvard and Yale and Princeton, they kind of let people come to them because they had a lot of pride. They wouldn't go out to get you unless you're really good. They would just let you come to them.
Uh-huh.
But Andy would go out and just find potential, not necessarily the best rowers, but find kids that he could train, and really he saw a lot of potential in. And so, we catapulted, like, from my freshman year there. The prior year, prior several decades, the team was pretty awful, like consistently placed last. And then our freshman year, one of the early head races, I can't remember which one, it was on the Charles though. We beat Penn and we beat Yale at Princeton. We beat Penn and Dartmouth, which were good rowing schools for lightweight. And everyone was like out of the blue, like, whoa, how did MIT do that? And so and it was really came down to Andy just really getting a lot of good guys who had potential, and then kind of training us like we were the underdogs and making us hungry for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it like rowing out there on the Charles as a college student?
It was cold and wet and miserable a lot of days.
Was it crowded? I imagine it was just completely crowded every morning.
It actually wasn't crowded because we were in the basin. And so a lot of our work we did in the basin there by the Mass Ave Bridge.
Yeah. It's a lot of space there.
Yeah, when you go upstream, it starts to get a little more crowded, but it was fun. I mean, that's how you get good at doing the head race stuff, is
that choppy water up there.
Yeah, choppy water and passing people, and yeah.
How'd you like Boston?
There are some benefits to Boston, but I was never really a big fan. I really didn't want to go up there. I didn't apply to any schools in cities. I always knew that I wanted to be out more in nature and in rural areas. And the MIT thing just kind of came out of the blue. It definitely wouldn't have been my first choice of places to go to, but it's the only place I got into of like all the schools I applied, with the exception of UVA. And so it's kind of just where I had to go. So I didn't have any real attraction to Boston, but I met a lot of great people there. I like it down here better though, in Central Appalachia. I like it west in the mountains. There's definitely there's a noticeable difference in culture from when you're on the coast in the coastal cities to when you move west and you start hitting the foothills. And there's kind of like a general culture shift at the foothills, and then you hit the mountains and there's an even more distinguishable culture shift. So I've always liked that in Appalachia. And so I'm really glad to be back here in West Virginia and Maryland.
Is it the slower pace of life that appeals to you, or more rural?
It's slower. I think it's more community centric. It's generally friendlier. I think people tend to just be a little more open in the mountains and open to their neighbors. In the city, there's a lot of places where neighbors who lived next to each other for 10 years really didn't know each other at all. And they were one or two houses down from each other. They just kind of knew each other in passing in the city. But that's not a thing here.
Greater sense of community.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What did you major in at MIT?
So I studied aerospace engineering. And the idea there was really I wanted to work on wind turbines and wind energy. And so I kind of shifted my focus from, most of the kids were into satellites and rockets and airplanes and helicopters, stuff like that. And I was like this weird kid who was into blimps and wind turbines. And so
you were the nerd, the wind turbine nerd.
Yeah, or just like the weird guys, like he likes wind turbines and blimps. We got rid of blimps at the Hindenburg. But yeah, so those are really my two passions within that was lighter than air travel, which I still think has a ton of potential. It's just an incredibly overlooked technology.
Interesting.
And it was the future back in the 20s and 30s. The future was we all would have our little RV blimp that we'd take off from our backyard and dock with the mothership and go and eat at the restaurant, and we'd just be floating over the United States or over the ocean or traveling the world, in these lighter than air airships. And so and then the Hindenburg really kind of ruined that one. I mean, that's a whole thing I could get into, but I think it's going to make a comeback at some point, and I'd love to be a part of that.
Interesting. I've had thoughts about that as well for beating traffic.
Yeah, I mean, imagine just lifting right up out of your backyard, going directly to where you want to go to. Maybe there's like you can rappel down or something, and your blimp just sits up there over top your office.
Yeah.
All day, and then you go up the elevator and you're up in your blimp. Like it just makes so much sense, and it's way, way, way more efficient than most forms
Rockets
of travel.
And jet fuel.
Airplanes for sure. It's like 1/10 the energy of an airplane. I think it's something like if you go half the speed in an airship, you go half the speed, you use 1/10 of fuel. So to get DC to New York is, I don't know what, 2-hour plane or something.
Yeah.
To double roughly that and take 4 hours, and you've used 1/10 of fuel. And in the meantime, you can walk up. You don't have to be in your seat. You can you kind of enjoy the flight. It's a much calmer flight. So I think we'll get there one day. We'll all have our own personal RVs that we'll have parked out on our land, and we can go visit each other without any traffic.
Hey, have you seen? There's a Netflix movie that my wife just turned me on to. Cindy, do you remember the name of it? About the kid in Africa who built a windmill?
Oh yeah, the boy who built the windmill.
Boy who harnessed the wind.
Yeah, but thank you. Yep, with William Kamkwamba.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he was a huge inspiration to me.
Really?
Yeah, I think that book came out when I was a junior or senior in high school, and I read it, and it was like, whoa, it's like this kid built this from scratch, and he's powering like his whole village and charging their cell phones and powering light bulbs, and it was all from just junk.
Yeah.
I found that so cool. I think that's a big reason why I went into aerospace.
Really, that is really interesting, because we talked about maybe try to get him on our podcast as well.
That'd be awesome. I'd be really curious to hear what he's up to.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. So let's see what else was. So studied aeronautical engineering at MIT, and then as a senior, you had a roommate, Gabe Blanchett, and somehow the two of you you hatched a business plan, and from there started a business. So love to hear about this story.
Yeah, so Gabe and I were kind of best friends through MIT. We met the first day, and we just had a lot of shared interests, going on adventures outdoors, and doing stuff that had environmental impact and also social impact. We were both into just solving problems. A lot of other people at MIT are into. I mean, there are a lot of people into solving problems, but some people just want a really good job, or want to make a bunch of money, or want to work on very specific technologies. But there's a subset of people who go to schools like that who really go because they want to change the world for the better. And Gabe was one of those people, and I saw that from early on when I met him. So he was really inspiring to me. And our senior year, he really took the business route, and so he took a lot of business classes, did some engineering, but was really, everyone knew that Gabe was going to start a business, start a startup out of college. And so we were rooming together our senior year, and I started getting really into kind of becoming, I don't know, just not as excited about wind energy anymore because of the dynamics of the large corporations that really control the space, and the fact that wind energy is limited by the storage capacity of the grid more so than the design of the turbines. So I realized that around my senior year, and so kind of started to have a shift to where can I make a bigger impact than in wind energy. Just becoming an engineer who works on a specific thing on a wind turbine, that's not a huge impact. So came across the idea that agriculture is really one of the biggest emitters of greenhouse gases, as well as the biggest destroyer of the things that sequester carbon, so the forests and the soils. Global agriculture is really responsible for the destruction of our planet's ability to sequester carbon, which ecosystems do very well. We talk about carbon sequestration like we have to build a technology that will sequester carbon, but we already have the technology. Like it's
already been built.
It's nature.
Yeah.
And the bigger the forest, the bigger the trees, the deeper the soils, the more diversity, the more carbon is sequestered in that ecosystem. And currently, we actually don't know the limits of carbon sequestration, because sequestration capacity actually it accelerates as the ecosystem matures, as the forest gets bigger. So we don't even know where the limits are, because we've cut down a lot of our old growth forests. So I kind of saw that and was like, wow, agriculture's got to be the number one kind of leverage point for addressing climate change. And so really started digging into that. Came across permaculture, which is this idea of really designing ecosystems that produce food, rather than looking at food as kind of like a manufacturing process or an assembly line, looking at it as just another ecosystem, but an ecosystem that's really designed from the ground up to produce as much human food as possible. And that led me to aquaponics, which is this, I guess you call it a technology, an eco-technology of where you basically take fish farming, which is called aquaculture, and hydroponics, which is a way to grow plants without soil, which is quite problematic. Hydroponics has a lot of issues to it. But when you combine it with the aquaculture and you actually use this waste product from the fish, which is their nasty, poopy water, well, that's great fertilizer for your plants. So you take these two separate industries, these two separate technologies, and you combine them, and you've just made both of them an order of magnitude more sustainable and efficient. And so kind of came across that, and that was like the gateway into this world for me, because it had a lot of technology to it. There were a lot of opportunities to automate things and to build machines that that fed the fish or did different things, and the lighting was cool to me. And that was really the gateway, because it merged these two things of technology and ecology into one really concise solution. So I started building these aquaponic systems in our dorm room. It was fraternity room. It was winter time. It was like January, February, and we had been living with this first aquaponic system for a couple weeks, and all of a sudden, like, it's flourishing, and there's fish in the fish tank, and greens just exploding out the top. Lettuces and kales, chard, and beans trellised up the window, and just growing all these veggies. And it was life changing, because it not only were we growing food, but it really changed the whole vibe of our room. Outside in Boston, it was like totally dead in the winter, and then inside our room, it felt like a tropical jungle. You'd open the door and be hit with this wave of like moist, like fresh smelling, oxygen rich air. And you noticed it in the social interactions, because people started hanging out in our room. Our room became like kind of the center of the house to some degree, or at least a watering hole where people gathered. It's because I think they're attracted to that greenery and just the life in the room. So we kind of observed this for several weeks, and we realized one day that, like, man, there's a business here. Like, we have the opportunity to really bring life into people's homes, to teach them about ecosystems and about growing food and how to be more self-sufficient, and to kind of reconnect people with nature through this thing that masquerades as a piece of technology, as a product, as tech, high tech. But really, what it is it's a technological box surrounding an ecological
system
cycle.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what started it. We came up with a business plan, and we submitted it to the school, and got into this business accelerator program that the school did in the summer after we graduated, and that kind of catapulted us. We got a few connections here and there, and it met the right people, and it just kind of blew up. We're right at the center of like the tech bubble, the tech investing bubble. We hit the wave like right on time there.
Well, when was that wave, according to you?
So that would be like, so we started 2013 that year, that winter, and then the summer, and then we raised our angel round raised the small angel round, and raised our seed round of about 2 million. I guess the next winter, so it's like, I think it was January or February 2014 or March. Yeah, so early 2014, and like the VCs were just dumping money at that point.
Jeez.
Looking for like, and every week you'd like hear about a new VC firm popping up, and we were Dave had tons of connections in that space, and we were kind of right at the center of everything that was happening.
Wow.
Which was exciting.
Can you talk about some of your who your VCs were?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I guess I want to finish that thought, which is it was exciting. Ahead. Looking back, it was like, it should have been scary.
Yeah.
like clearly it was like, to give us $2 million right off the bat with very little, it just kind of came out of the blue. I mean, it wasn't hard to get the first 2 million. It was harder to raise future rounds, but the first 2 million was just like, here you go, and we were like, holy, wow, what do we do with this?
Yeah.
We're just young, we're just out of college. So looking back, it's like, I don't know if that was the right thing for the economy, but it was exciting to be at the middle of it. And we met some really awesome people, and not to downplay them, like some of our investors were amazing. Like the Upfront Ventures, they were our lead investors, Eve, and then later Mark's sister. They really mentored us through a lot of the business stuff, and Kevin Zhang there. And then we had some other kind of high profile investors, Gary Vaynerchuk's firm, and Tim Ferriss did a portion of the round through AngelList. So that kind of accelerated things a little bit more, having those names on board. And then a lot of smaller investors who really didn't contribute as much money, but contributed a lot of advice, and really led us through it, helped us through the process.
Wow, what an awesome boost right there at the very beginning of an idea.
Yeah, we were soaring at that time. We didn't realize how hard it would be.
Yeah, so talk a little bit about that. What, how did it get hard?
Well, I think we saw headcount as like kind of this metric of like how successful we were, like, because you always see that on like TechCrunch articles or whatever. Like, I don't know, head count's always a thing. So we really built our team really fast and hired people full time, and we quickly grew. After that first round, we might have had 4 or 5 people, with a couple people working part time, and then that 2 million came in, and we grew very quickly in terms of headcount. It was very quick to get from 6 to 12, and 6 to 12 was a great number. We were working really well in the 8s, 9s, 10s, 11s, 12s as a team. It was easy to manage, and we were very self-organizing. It wasn't hierarchical. Everyone had their thing going on. It was helping other people with their thing, and it was very just organic at that phase. And I think part of where we miscalculated is we kept growing beyond that, and soon we were at 17, and it started to get kind of divided up a little bit, and and a little more siloed into groups and kind of cliques forming, and then getting up into the low 20s, very much so, and started to see like some politics at play, which really bothered me, because I liked it when it was small and we were very efficient in moving forward, but
I hear you.
Doing it small.
Yeah.
And eventually we got up to like, I think we had like 28 one summer with like six of those people interns, so like 22 full time and 6 interns. And at that point, especially with engineers in Boston, like we're just burning through money way faster than we can raise it. And at this point, I don't even know if, we probably did, and we did have some sales from our early adopter product, but it wasn't enough to keep our burn rate going close. So we just had to keep raising money through these rounds. And eventually we kind of, we did this kind of big Hail Mary with our last product that we called the Grove Ecosystem. And it was a success in terms of marketing, and customers loved it. It was an awesome product, just absolutely beautiful aquaponics system. But it was way overpriced. We didn't have product market fit at the price that we could build it for. We over designed it because we wanted to build the best, sleekest thing. We had like this Apple mentality rather than like a Linux mentality or something. And I think that was really one of the big problems, is that we made it unaccessible. I always felt like we had to make something for like under $600.
Yeah.
And we ended up making something that we couldn't sell for any less than like $3,000. And that was really just a much smaller market, and a much more demanding market to be kind of in that more luxury price point.
Right.
So I think that was a big part of it. And then I think, so we started cutting down our numbers, cutting down our headcount, realizing what was coming. And we kind of got to a point in the road where it was like, do we keep going down this path and try and make this work, and maybe we'll redesign the product and bring the price point down? Or do we make a big pivot and actually design or actually build them for schools, which is where we actually were finding a decent market, because school systems could actually afford a $3,000 product that had many thousands of dollars worth of value each year in education. And they could raise grant money for it, and we were making sales there, and the teachers loved the product. And that was really interesting to me, was the education. So I really dove headfirst into education. How can we get these in classrooms? And we kind of like let that happen for a while as a side project, as maybe the thing that might either be a side business or maybe might be the thing that we pivot to. And I got to the point where I was like, man, this is the only thing that's going to work. Is if we pivot now, we cut everything that's not necessary, and we go all out on schools, and we do this as an educational product. And it's just the way the politics worked and the people on the team with power. It just wasn't. We didn't have enough people to make that decision. We kept going on our path and spent all of our money, basically. So that was kind of where I lost a lot of motivation. Because I realized, like, man, I couldn't even advocate. I couldn't make this pivot happen in time, and people didn't necessarily want to hear it. At least the majority of people on the team in positions of power. So I guess that'd be my one regret, is not pushing that more, and not, really putting everything into shifting it towards education earlier. Because I think we'd still be going, and there'd be Grove ecosystems in schools across the country, all over, and there'd be tons of kids who'd be learning about nature and agriculture in this small little microcosm of an agricultural ecosystem.
So it's interesting you talk about education. So I wrote my dissertation on what is the nature of aesthetic experience in prolonged extreme natural environments, and what implication does this have on learning, their worldview, lifestyle, and do their behaviors end up reflecting the ego consciousness? So what I found out was actually much bigger than that. And my entire chapter 4 is your TED Talk. So I watched it and geeked out, obviously, and realized I didn't have to write a dissertation. I could have just watched your TED Talk.
Yeah, just done your own TED Talk.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. So one of the things I found was that people who had been in this situation and finally got away from, all of this aesthetic input. So we have these lights that are constantly in our eyes, and we have these noises all around us. And in extreme natural environments, we are able to experience all of our senses versus in society where we block it. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. And those people who had that experience were able to reconnect to nature in a totally different way. And when they came back to society, the majority of them said, I want to educate others on this experience. So they changed their careers and took jobs in schools. and
Wow.
are really focused on their children and experiencing them. So it was really cool to see your TED Talk. So with that,
Yeah.
tell me a little bit
That's pretty cool.
about what led you to do the TED Talk and really figure out that systems thinking, learning with nature. And do you have any impetus to, because you talked about education, so clearly you have a passion for it. Do you have any impetus to start working with others and educating them in natural environments?
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool, that connection. Yeah, I feel like, I mean, we probably both experienced this through our work, but like when you basically, like, there's something that being immersed in nature does to how you think. I think it feels like you have more interconnections between areas of your brain, because you start to see parallels in everything, and in the way that a tree grows, the parallel with the way that the water flows, and the parallel with the way that the plumbing system works in your house, and the rocks and the fissures in the rocks, and the way that the butterfly flies. And it's just like you start to put a lot of stuff together. And really what it is like it's your brain seeing, like, it's your brain basically learning how systems work, like just systems in general, any system, because you're seeing lots of different systems working, and they're nested systems. So like the tree is a system, and I could observe that, but then the grove of trees is a system, and there's, so they're nested as well. And so having I've always been a kid who spent a lot of time in nature, but I didn't really make that connection until bringing these ecosystems into schools and seeing the kids start to point out things that were kind of breakthrough realizations for them, and sometimes were breakthrough realizations for me. Having them point out cool things that are happening in the aquarium, or the way that plants were growing around each other in the garden bed, or the way that the plants in the window are curving in a certain way, and that's because the sun is rising in the east and they're pointing towards that, and then it gets shaded out for half the day, and then it's in the west, so they're the plants are curving around. And seeing this, making these types of realizations and seeing kids do that was just totally mind-blowing to me. And I realized that this has got to be the foundation of our education system, is just putting kids into nature and not telling them what to learn, but seeing what they learn, and they might come up with some really cool stuff. And so I guess that led to the TED Talk. I honestly can't even tell you how that led to the TED Talk, but someone reached out to me and said they liked what we were doing in the school space, because we were selling systems in schools and posting content about that. And they asked me to do a TED Talk at a school, which I think was focused on education. And so I kind of just, I'm not a big public speaker, but I saw it as an opportunity to kind of share my story of how I kind of went through that nature immersion in my childhood, and how that influenced me to get to where I was, and how I think a lot of kids can have that. And it's actually like a more affordable way to educate kids, right? Like, you don't have all this crap that in the school. Like, you literally just bring them outside, and you look at whatever, you observe anything. I mean, it could be the plants growing up through the sidewalks. Like, there's 1,000 things you can learn from just a small microcosm. And so yeah, that led me to the TED Talk. And I guess moving forward, it didn't work out with Grove, but I still see that as one of my core missions, is to help kids basically reconnect with nature, so they can learn, figure out what's inside of them, by observing what's around them. And that could manifest itself in a school, or in summer camps, or cool farm and forest homestead that schools can take field trips to. I don't know exactly how it's going to manifest, but it's definitely in my future, to help kids reconnect with nature and learn from that.
That's very cool. So I wanted to circle back a little bit and kind of ask you if starting a business was ever in the cards for you, starting college or going through college. Was that anything Did you have any vision for your life doing that kind of thing then? And do you still have it now, or is that
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
burned out?
Oh yeah. No, I've never been the type of person who can really work for someone else full time. That's just not my personality. I'm not a good full time employee. I've got to be doing something creative on my own. So yeah, I think starting a business was always kind of what I was thinking of, but not necessarily starting a business, just doing my own thing, and
Right.
maybe a business would come out of that, which is kind of where I'm at now. Like, I've always wanted to climb. I've always liked to climb trees, and um, I always thought being an arborist would be kind of cool to be a climbing arborist. So once Grove was over and we shut that down, and I moved back home to Shepherdstown area, West Virginia, I met up with this awesome, wise, hippie tree climbing elder named Storm, who's kind of infamous in this area, and I reached out to him and said, hey, I'm kind of interested in learning your trade, and so he took me on, and I worked as ground crew, watching him climb, and then within a couple months he was like, I think you're ready, and so he taught me how to climb and go up into big trees of all types, and we say we're giving them haircuts because we don't kill trees, we just try and keep them healthy, and that's through improving the soil and through trimming them and keeping them healthy so that people feel safe having them around, and that the trees kind of stay healthy. So I learned that in like about a year, and after about a year, Storm told me, he's like, I think you're ready to do your own thing. So he kind of sent me off, and I started this business doing ecological consulting and tree work and ecological landscaping and permaculture design. And so it's not really something I ever thought about that I would start a business doing. It just kind of happened because it was the opportunity, and it merged all these things that I really like. So that's kind of my day to day now is designing landscapes for people, trimming their trees in a way that's really ecologically beneficial, and building ponds and swales and terraces, and help people bring natives and food crops back to their land, and finding a lot of fulfillment in this work, and it's funding my life and my ability to be on my own land, and it's really fulfilling to help people out with their land.
That's really awesome. So I just want to get a little bit clearer picture on how Grove closed down. What actually happened there to actually finish it off before you ended up going climbing trees?
Yeah, so it was a slow
death.
slow controlled descent, I would say.
Uh-huh.
We didn't just shut it down. We made some really painful cuts over the course of 4 months when we realized that financially it just wasn't going to work out, and that was probably the hardest experience of my entire life. Like, really 4 to 6 super difficult months, and having really hard conversations with people, and a lot of pain for me and for Gabe and for everyone on the team, because we had a really kind of tight knit, close team and a really awesome culture, and we really all loved each other. So it was hard to kind of break that up.
Yeah.
And just as we were getting down to like 4 of us left, kind of ready to shut it down, we got this email from a Korean appliance manufacturer, a big kind of well-known Korean appliance manufacturer. And the email was, hey, we like your product. We want to build something similar. Will you help us design it? And this is like 2 or 3 days before we were basically pulling the trigger to shut everything down.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, that sounds interesting. I was a little bit hesitant because I was kind of ready to shut it down. But we decided to go with it. And within, I don't know, just a couple weeks, we were flying out to California to meet with these executives from the company. And within a couple months, I think we were flying out to Korea. And
no kidding.
Yeah, there were 6 of us, on the team at that point, and 4 of us went out to Korea and basically ran a whole kind of like we became a consulting and design business.
Huh.
And we worked with them, for like a week at a time. 2 times over the course of the year, we would fly out a week and then do everything else remote. And we did a lot of the research and growing in these appliances. We did that research back in Boston, and then we helped them design the user interfaces and a lot of the forward-facing things, as well as the back end stuff, like how you actually grow the plants, the algorithms for that, and the control systems to irrigate and control the climate and all that. We really we helped. We worked with this team at this huge company and built a product in like the course of, I think it was less than a year. I think it was like 9 months, and it was really exciting. We were all getting along. We really liked them, like the team there, and the Korean culture. And then the last time we were in Korea, the current president got into office, and we were there basically at the height of like the nuclear scare, like the height of tensions between North and South Korea and America. Was our last trip there, and it was like kind of unnerving that we were in a place that was like felt like it was on the edge of war, and you kind of feel it in the air there that everyone was nervous, and it was partially like the fault of our own country and our country's leadership, and that, I think that left a kind of a sour taste in the South Korean leaderships in their minds for America, and we were working so well with them, and we were ready to renew our contract and keep going on the next version of the product. And one day they reached out to us and said, "Hey, we've been talking with our top executives, and they just they don't want to take the risk of partnering with an American company at this point."
Man.
They're like, "We would love to work with you guys. Like, we would love to keep this going, but it's coming from the top that they don't want to keep this going." And so it came out of the blue. So at that point, we realized, this is it. Like, we tried it. We had a lot of fun in Korea, kind of one last hurrah, and we came back and shut it down.
What year was that? Was that this year or last year?
Oh, that was sometime 2018.
Oh, okay.
When was the election? Was 2016?
I don't remember.
I don't even remember. It
was 2016.
Yeah, so it probably, so we were probably doing that work through 2017, and then early 2018 or late 2017, that kind of fell apart. But it was like it was a fun last hurrah, and we learned a lot and got to experience a really different culture, and actually a culture that's very connected with nature, which was really cool to see. So the product really worked for them because they have this culture of, I don't know, just having more respect for life on Earth, I think, than most Western culture does. And so they just found it really cool that you could grow all these different plants, and plants that are medicinal, and plants that you can make teas out of, and kind of have a relationship with plants in your tiny soul apartment. So yeah, really, really grateful for that opportunity to work with those guys. But yeah, go ahead.
When did you ultimately shut down the company? Was that 2018?
That's a good question. It's all kind of blending together, but yeah, probably 2018, or maybe it's 2017.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like maybe you shut it down too early? Because I'm like, well, what if you made it so you could grow pot in your house? Or what if COVID-19 had, and everybody wants to grow their own food locally now?
Yeah.
What if we had a grow system now?
Totally. Yeah. I think we could have pulled it through to some degree, but it's like at that point,
it's just timing.
Well, none of our investors wanted to put anything else in.
Yeah.
So they were kind of burnt out. The bubble was kind of, the VC investment bubble was kind of popping to some degree, and they were starting to be a lot more careful with where they were putting their money at, and we just didn't fit the bill. So it wasn't like we could have raised money. So basically, we're back to bootstrapping.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if we're going to bootstrap, like, we might as well shut this down and do something different.
Mm.
And if we're going to shut it down and do something different, we still have this non-compete clause with the past company. So it was like, well, we got to basically, we
I see.
kind of had
Okay.
no other choice. I mean,
Yeah.
so much of the equity was eaten up that it's like, it makes no point to bootstrap a company that's already entirely owned by other people. You know, we don't have much more stake left in the thing.
Wow.
And some debt. So it's like, we just can't make it happen anymore.
Yeah.
And we were all burnt out at that point too. Everyone needed a break and a shift. So it was ultimately a good thing. It was painful to go through, but coming out the other side, it just, I think it felt a lot better for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about permaculture. We texted you, I forget, maybe 2 years ago about telling you about some land we bought down in Southern Virginia and how it had been clear cut by the lumber companies, and the soil's really poor and a lot of soil erosion. But we have big dreams for the place. We want to we want to bring it back to, its former natural beauty. We experiment. We plant all kinds of different trees. We've planted London plane trees and cedar and what else have we planted, Cindy? There's so many different things we're experimenting with. We've got a little apple orchard we're trying to keep going.
Cool.
Hasn't done really well.
We did plums and apples and pecans and aspens and, as you said, planes and pines, everything.
Wow, that you planted just since you first reached out to me?
Oh yeah.
Whoa, that's awesome.
Not everything is working though, so it's just kind of.
What's really thriving? I'm curious.
The London planes have done really well, surprisingly.
Yeah.
It's
basically a sycamore.
Yeah.
It's a hybrid sycamore.
Right.
So is that area kind of wet where they're planted?
It is kind of on it's a lower area of the land so there's quite a bit of runoff down there.
They have that Virginia clay.
Yep.
That red orange.
And sand, a lot of sandy, loamy soil.
The Virginia rosebud is doing really well too.
Right.
We planted 2 or 3 of those, and they're taking off as well.
The red buds.
The red buds, yes.
Yeah, they're pretty good. Like early pioneer species. I see them popping up in people's gardens everywhere. Oh, that's really cool. So, okay. So what's your dream for the land? I mean, turn it back on you. And what's your dream? What's your vision for this land?
We want lots of trees. There's no shade there at all right now. A lot of the loblolly and Virginia pine I don't know if they planted them after they cut everything down or if those are just trees popping up from the ones that were cut down. I'm not sure, but there's tons of pine that are popping up. So we're going to have a lot of pine there. Pretty tall pine in a number of years. That's good. I wanted to build, not have a monoculture of just pine, but, a whole bunch of different species growing in there. A lot of hardwoods and fruit trees and that kind of thing. Want to have some pastures with lots of green grass because we want to have maybe a cow or two and some goats and various types of animals. Horses, of course. Yeah. Cool. We'd love to have plant a vineyard in there.
Cool. So a forest section, a pasture section, and vineyard/orchard.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, some thoughts off the top of my head is like, those pine trees, the loblolly and Virginia pines, like they're a great kind of pioneer species. They come in that really crappy, degraded soil, and they create shade, and they keep humidity, and they acidify the soil a little bit to lead to other species of hardwood. So like if you've got those popping up, once they get to, 12 to 20 feet, you can really start planting your hardwoods in between them. Your hickory nuts and your pecans and your oaks, chestnut, elms. Like you could plant all that in. And, if you're really trying to produce food, like the nut trees are something I've been really into. The pecans, our hickories. We've got 6 or 7 native hickory trees, and honestly, the shagbark and shellbark hickory trees, which are native, are the best tasting nut I've ever had in my entire life.
I've never even heard of that.
It's I'm someone who really likes walnuts and pecans even more, and they're kind of in between, but they add a whole different element. They're just really this savory, nutty, fatty nut that's almost a little bit sweet, and I think is better than a good pecan. So that's the shellbark. I think the shellbark is the larger one, so that's probably the one you want to plant. And there's also hybrids between the pecans and the hickories because they're closely related. You can get a hicon, which is a hybrid that kind of produces a thinner shelled hickory nut that's easier to crack and process. But yeah, I mean, like you can grow something on the order of like in 30 years, you can grow like 10 times the amount of calories per acre using nut trees compared to an annual crop like corn or wheat or soy. So you get like 10 times the amount of calories in like 30 years from that same acre.
Interesting.
And in like 100 years, you're producing like 100 times the calories from these big, massive nut trees. So really, like if we're looking at sustainability of using our land for agriculture, like nut trees with fruit in the understory is really like the way to maximize what we can get off the land.
Love that.
Yeah, corn, wheat, and soy really does not make sense anymore. Like we've hit the limit of that making sense, and we drastically need to divest from these destructive annual crops, whether they're no-till or not. Like they just don't make any sense anymore. So we need to shift that land that's being planted in the same crop or rotated through annuals every year, and start planting chestnuts, hazelnuts, hickory nuts, pecans, walnuts, black walnuts, all the nuts, as well as fruits that are really productive, like mulberries and persimmon and pawpaws in the understory, and pears. And, we can just produce so much more food and have so much more abundance if we kind of rethink how we plant our land. And have the patience to wait it out.
I was going to say
15 years to have a nut grove.
It's a long-term play versus a seasonal, return.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is another reason I love that.
Yeah, and there are ways to do it. Like, your nut trees are actually, if you have a deer problem, like the deer can really eat a lot of your trees when you get started. So it makes a lot of sense to actually plant. Follow what nature does. Like you plant brambles first. So you plant your blackberries, raspberries, black raspberries, loganberries, wineberries, all that stuff. Plant a couple rows of that, or plant patches, and then plant your nut trees right in the middle of that. And that's like the natural defense that these trees have from your deer, or even your goats, if you want to graze goats or cows or sheep in that area. And so you can get, if you do it smartly, you can get harvests from year one. Plant your sunflowers year one, and they really help improve the soil, or hemp. And while you harvest that and you use all that biomass to mulch the land and improve it, maybe you graze some goats through there after you've harvested to really knock it all down. And then that fall, plant your blackberries, raspberries in your rows, along with black locust, which will be your future fence posts, as well as a lot of fodder for your goats and your horses, because they can eat the black locust. It's like a tree alfalfa, and and you kind of just follow the natural succession that leads eventually to your smaller fruit trees, and you get 15 years, 30 years out of your apples, and then your nut trees start to take over, and they become a dominant species. So yeah, really following like nature's natural progression, the ecological succession.
Love that. Do you help people put together long-term plans for their land like that?
Yeah, I've been dabbling in it for a while, and got a couple opportunities recently to really start to do that more. And that's really where I want to be at, is managing my own land long term, like that, but also helping other people come up with the plans and make it happen on their land.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we can, if I can do it on my own land, and I can directly teach 10 people, and then share the idea with 100 people, and then imagine you with your land, once you're 5 years into it and you're really learning, then you can do the same, help 10 people directly, and share the idea with 100 people. I mean, that's just totally exponential. And,
changing the world.
Yeah, in 3 decades, we've made a gigantic impact. So yeah, that's kind of how I'm thinking. It's like the teach a man to fish thing.
Oh man, that's inspirational. Love that.
Yeah. I'll be glad to help. You guys want to brainstorm ideas? Let's do it.
Talk about a little bit real quick about water. You mentioned Sepp Holzer to us, and he's a big water guy in terms of using that to bring back the soil and the life of an ecosystem.
Yeah. The thing that really got me going on this was I was in high school. I think I was a sophomore, and my mom took a trip to Switzerland, where she had always wanted to go, and I decided to give her a Mother's Day present. She was gone for 2 weeks, so we had always talked about having frog ponds in our yard because we both love frogs, and so I dug her a frog pond while she was gone, and built a waterfall out of a bunch of stones we had in the yard. It was lined with rubber and had a couple of tiers, and then I surrounded it with slate and planted some plants around the outside. And when she got back, it was done. The yard was transformed. But the real transformation was over the next several months to a year, where we saw this water source in our yard totally transformed our yard in multiple dimensions. The wildlife was more than we had ever seen. We started to see larger and larger animals, more bugs, frogs, foxes, raccoons, rabbits, tons of different birds started to come over the first few years. And then we also, psychologically, we were really attracted to the sound of the water trickling and the water there. And we started spending a lot more time in the yard. And that led to us planting a food forest, because we were out in the yard more and starting to dream about what it would become. And it really started with this pond. This water was like the catalyst to all this change. And now my mom's yard is totally a food forest. We're probably almost a decade into really transforming your yard, and it is just so cool back there. There's kiwis and apricots and berries and tons of veggies, and all these weeds that we later learned were medicinal and edible, that we let go wild, and now we find to be totally beautiful. And the pond is still going. I've renovated it so that we made it larger, and now it's like a hot tub, except it's a cold tub, so you can get in it and cool off in the summer. And so it really started with water. So I think from that experience, that's what really attracted me to Sepp Holzer's work, where he's got 40 ponds on his alpine farm, and he's on a really steep slope, and the ponds are at different levels, and he has all these terraces, and they do a couple things. They passively irrigate the soil around them, because the soil that goes from the pond bank up into the garden beds, into the crop fields, acts as a wick, and it brings water up there. It increases the humidity around, which in turn lengthens the growing season, because humid air can hold on to more heat. Also, the ponds themselves become solar collectors, so they warm it up. So he's growing tomatoes way up in the Alps, in a place where you shouldn't really be able to do that. And it's because of the way he's transformed the land, primarily with ponds. And he's also getting energy off them. I think he runs several hydro turbines. His animals drink out of the ponds. So I think that's really a place to start when you get some land, is figure out where the water already is, and if it's not already there, or if it is already there and you just think there could be more water, dig that pond or those swales, or create a vernal pool. I'm actually looking at our duck pen to my right here, and I just set a pond in. We got our ducks several weeks ago, and we had just a kiddie pool for them. But I realized I needed something more substantial, so I put this in like a week and a half ago maybe, and I'm cleaning it out today. I got a sump pump in there, and I pump the dirty water out into the garden beds as fertilizer and refill it. And there's a frog that's already moved into the pond, so it's already attracting life.
Wow.
Yeah. Have you guys thought about where the pond's going on your land?
We have. We talked to, I forget what you call it, the Virginia Tech. They have people associated with Virginia Tech that help farmers with advice and stuff like that. We talked to one of them, and she said there's quite a lot of things you need to consider with putting in a pond. Something like that. We would have to talk to the Army Corps of Engineers and stuff like that. So we were kind of, I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess West Virginia is different than Virginia in terms of that stuff.
And there are limits. Like you can't just build a gigantic pond, but but you can put. There are certain limits you can put. I don't know. It probably varies county to county, but you can put in a pond, and a lot of times you can just do it anyway. The real danger is you don't want to put it in an area that's already a wetland, because that's a big no-no federally.
Oh yeah.
Because of the wetland setback rules. But I know a lot of people put in small ponds, and it's fun, and you can always expand it, right? So like you get the backhoe for the weekend, and you just basically just figure out. I mean, first is siting, and second is figure out the layout, and then play around with the backhoe for the weekend. That might not work right off the bat, but you'll see where the water runs into it. And you want to seal it, which in Virginia with clay is really easy to do. If you got sandy soils, it might not be as easy. But if you got a clay layer, it's pretty easy. But yeah, I mean, there's some key things for designing them. But if you keep it small, it's totally doable. And I think it's if it is illegal, I think it's an act of civil disobedience that needs to happen, because we need to collect as much water on our land as possible. Because it's all running downstream, and we sure as hell don't make good use of it, because we're polluting it, at every turn in the river and out into the ocean. So the more that we can keep on landowners' land to help out their ecosystems, the better ecologically. So it's like, and that's something Sepp Holzer talks about. He's gotten into troubles with his ponds, and he's just fought the bureaucracy for years, and continuously wins because he just has really good cases for ecological benefits. And he's luckily in a country that puts a lot of emphasis on environmental issues, so he can always make a good case like what I'm doing is the best for everyone, and they let him eventually do his thing. So I think that's a fight that, well, it's not a fight we have to take up. I think there's a lot of stuff that we can get around and just do it. And that's kind of the culture here in West Virginia. It's like, just do it. Like, it's a free country.
Yeah.
If you're doing the right thing, just do it. And if they come after you, like, we're all gonna come together and tell them that no, you can't come after this farmer for doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think there'll be more of that, as more people get into permaculture and this type of stuff, because a lot of the regulations and the bureaucracy is totally backwards. But it's stuff that we need to change, and I think we've changed it by just starting to do the right thing and taking it one step at a time.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree. And yes, I think we need to build a pond and just not say anything. It'll just magically happen. So we do actually have we do have one more question for you. And so what I've heard this whole conversation is you have an extreme eco-consciousness and passion for nature, and passion for making sure that we're really good keepers of the earth and really looking forward thinking. And so what that comes out in is a job and your future. You're still kind of working through some of those things, but everything seems to correlate back to that. Now, when you're talking to kids or college kids, high school kids, how would you help them? What advice would you give them to help find that one passion that would drive everything that they do?
That's a really good question. I think it's I've learned over the years, and I'm still really trying to practice this, but it's that saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. There's like this whole strategy that one of my mentors, Mark Morey, who's a really fantastic leader, and has helped me in developing my leadership capabilities. He talks about the art of questioning. And he's like, you can make way more progress with someone, helping them achieve their potential by asking them the right questions, than you can by telling them what you observe about them. You know, I may see that you're passionate about this thing, you don't realize it, but me telling you that has the potential to push you away, or you might just not connect with you. But if I can ask the right questions, you can come to the solutions that are already inside of you. So I guess I'd start with that, where I think everyone, at least most people, already have that passion inside of them, and they've probably suppressed it to some degree because of expectations from their parents or their community or their culture, or trauma from their childhood. And so it's already in everyone, and it's just a matter of opening that up. And you know, we just gotta connect with everyone around us, and help ask the questions to people that help them realize what steps they need to take to fulfill their path. And so it's kind of a vague, very general answer, but I think it's just so specific to the person. And I don't know. I'm much more into the idea of helping people one-on-one than broad messaging. You know, as good as broad messaging is, I've learned a ton from podcasts like this and from TED Talks. You can inspire people that way, but you can make a lot more progress, I think, just meeting that kid one-on-one and just seeing what they're about, and helping them through that. And if I can just inspire one kid to change the world in person, I think I've made a, you know, I fulfilled my path. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but I'm going to leave it there.
Yeah, it totally answers the question. That's brilliant. So what I heard you saying was like really kind of individualize and coach that one person to help them ask the powerful questions, to help them find what they want to do and who they are.
Yeah, be that mentor that's asking the questions that they're not getting asked from anyone else.
That's fantastic.
And you've definitely inspired me. So
cool. That's awesome. I'm inspired by you guys being inspired about your land.
We're all inspired.
Like, you've planted more trees than I have, man. I got to catch up.
We probably killed more trees than you planted.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's a start. It's still biomass on the land.
Yeah, that's right.
Fungal food.
Yeah. Well, hey, man, it's been a pleasure having you on here. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for the inspiration. It's so good to hear about what you've done since high school and MIT. It's good catching up with you. Please tell your dad I said hi, and I miss seeing you guys on the water.
Yeah, likewise. I'm really glad to reconnect with you guys, and excited to see your land one day.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to keep in touch on that.